What is going on, everybody? Taylor here. I am back to finally talk full spoilers for Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. I released my non spoiler review about 2 weeks ago now. And I'm really excited to now get to jump into talking all of the details, talking about what I loved, what I didn't love, and everything in between. If you are listening to this on the Lights on a Screen podcast feed, thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching here on YouTube, thanks for clicking on the video and checking this out. Appreciate having you guys here with me. Let's just jump into it. So, The Final Reckoning is a long movie. All right, let's just start off with the runtime. It feels its runtime at certain points, which is a bit unfortunate. Overall, it's a kind of a messy movie, and there are moments that they probably could have cut out to make it a tighter story. I definitely think that the trimming really could have helped with some pacing issues that I personally have. The beginning of the film has far too many flashbacks and just way too much exposition. I know that exposition is a big part of the Mission Impossible movies as someone who loves this franchise as much as I do, but there's just first 20 minutes, there's just too much of it. And I love having callbacks to the previous films, especially if this is going to be the very last Mission Impossible movie that we get. But there was just flashback after flashback after flashback where they would explain something and then flash back to it and then explain it again and then flash back to it again. And I just feel like it was really disorienting the first time I saw the movie. I've seen the movie twice at this point, and the first time I saw the movie, that was really overwhelming and disorienting for me. It was less so the second time, but it still kind of felt like there was just a little bit too much there. Um, it also kind of made me feel like they were expecting the audience to not be familiar with any of the Mission Impossible movies, that they felt the audience really needed to be reminded of what has happened in those movies. And I guess for the first couple movies, that makes sense to me, but they were doing that with the previous installation with Dead Reckoning, which really kind of felt like too much. I don't know. I just wish that it would have chosen to use flashbacks as a tool a little differently, because it didn't quite work as an effective storytelling device to me, just because I wish that it would have let the audience kind of fill in the blanks in some places and do their own kind of recollection of previous movies. But that's one of my biggest problems when I'm my biggest nitpicks when there is really a lot to love about the movie. One other thing I want to touch on that I don't think quite worked was Grace's story and character. I love Haley Atwell so much, and I think she's great as Grace. I just feel like some of the story beats here are moments that feel like they were meant for Ilsa. Um, the dramatic rescue of Ethan from the water after the big submarine stunt, it just didn't land in a hugely emotional way that I feel like the movie kind of wanted it to. And it would have landed that way if it was Ilsa, if it was someone who really has had that connection with Ethan for several movies now. I think that Tom and Haley have great chemistry together, and I think when they're in the decompression chamber together, I think they make that scene work from a chemistry kind of situation. Like, I believe that there's affection there. I believe that there's attraction there, but I just don't think emotionally it lands because it's not Ilsa. Maybe I'm in the minority there, but it's a weird dilemma for me to have because I think, like I said, emotionally, it would have made more of an impact if it was Ilsa. But if they were trying to lean into more of like a romantic chemistry, sexual chemistry kind of thing, I think that Tom and Haley have that much more, and it's much more obvious, and there's a bigger spark there. So it's a bit of a dilemma for me. I'm not quite sure how you, I guess, depending on how you want that scene to read, you would kind of pick which way you were going to go. But yeah, I wish I would have felt more emotionally as that scene was happening. We want to talk about things that did land emotionally. Luther's death was a gut punch. I went into this movie fully expecting we were going to lose someone on the team, that someone was going to die, especially with the way that they were presenting the trailers to us. I did not think it was going to be Ethan. Thought it was going to be someone Ethan was very close to, because that's kind of been one of the big overarching themes of the whole series, right? Is that Ethan is going to do everything he can to protect his team, even if that's, choosing to betray the IMF and go rogue and do things the way he's not supposed to do them, if it means that he's going to keep his friends, his team safe. So felt like that was probably going to be something that was going to happen. And when we realized that it's Luther, when it's the only person in his team that's been in every single Mission Impossible movie with him, that hurt a lot. It was a very bittersweet goodbye, and it leaves Ethan as a character shaken in a way that I don't think anything in the series ever has before, because obviously we've seen him worried about Julia and how that whole kind of thing unfolded, and how he still, worries for her. And we've seen the way that he's willing to sacrifice himself for his team, but I don't think we've ever really seen Ethan have to deal with an actual loss like this. And you can see it on his face, and it's really a cool emotional moment that we're granted access to, that I don't think we necessarily get from Ethan a lot or ever. I was super relieved that it wasn't Benji. I was kind of worried that it might be, just because the trailers kind of felt like they were trying to get people prepared for that possibility a little bit. And my husband was convinced that it was going to be Benji. And so I was kind of trying to emotionally prepare for that. But seeing him walk into frame in that final kind of goodbye sequence where we get to say goodbye to the characters, the first time I saw the movie, the whole audience just like burst into cheering and applause. We were all so overwhelmed with just relief that Benji was still around after what they put him through towards the end of this movie, which that whole moment made me extremely emotional. Seeing Paris have to perform surgery on him with a roll of duct tape and a deconstructed pen, I was high key stressed out. The tension they were able to build in that sequence, intercutting between that and Ethan trying to, do his plane stunts, and the intercutting of the other three trying to disarm a bomb, the tension building in that sequence was immaculate. And I really enjoyed the group kind of dynamics that they set up. I think Grace and Benji and Paris in that little scene together had great chemistry. And then the Degas and the William Donlow and his wife little group trying to disarm the bomb. That little group dynamic was great. And I think a huge part of what makes these films successful is the group dynamic, is having a group dynamic that has great chemistry, that's able to play off of each other in a way that you root for them. You want them to succeed because you like all the members of the team and you like how they interact with each other. And I think that is something this movie does particularly well, with how many characters that it's truly juggling throughout the film. There is another, speaking of intercutting, there's another sequence that I think might be my favorite in the whole movie. It's an intercutting of two different fight scenes. One where Ethan Hunt is fighting in a submarine in only tight black boxer briefs, which is an 11 out of 10. Whoever decided that was going to be a thing. Just incredible cinema. And the other is a group fight sequence in the house on the island with Deus and Grace and Paris and Benji and Donlow, and that group doing some really, really cool fight choreography. Both scenes that it's intercutting between have super cool fight choreography. Like, it's beautifully crafted and executed when it comes to the stunt work and the action sequences there, because they're really using the space around them in the settings to play off of, and to create action beats. And I just really love when movies do that. This movie is absolutely gorgeous on a massive IMAX screen. All of the stunts are impressive and awe-inspiring, like as you expect them to be and in hopes that they will be. The stunt work in the scenes with the red and yellow planes that you see a little bit of in the trailers is really just unbelievable. It's an unbelievable achievement because I had to sit there and make sure to remind myself that that was Tom Cruise. This is not just an Ethan Hunt character with a stunt double doing some stuff with some CG and some screens. No, this was Tom Cruise actually on this plane doing these extremely dangerous, unhinged stunts. Um, and even after all these years of being completely aware of his commitment to the stunt work and the work that he does with his team, it still impresses the hell out of me anytime that he and the rest of the team give us another one of these just unbelievable stunt sequences. There are a lot of callbacks to the previous films shoved into this movie, but the one that I enjoyed the most by far was the inclusion of William Donlow. I thought that his inclusion really made sense for the story that they were trying to tell, and it was a really interesting way for Ethan to be confronted by his past actions, and something that not only is from his past, one of the first things we got to witness him do in the first Mission movie, but it's something that he feels he needs to atone for and just doesn't know how. So Donalo sitting there and thanking him for what he did and telling him how instead of ruining his life, he saved his life. That was such a beautiful moment and such a great way for Ethan to get appreciation, to get recognition, to really just feel like he's doing something right. You know, like the things he's doing are for good, that he's actually, helping people. And it's a cool way for the audience to also kind of be a proxy in that moment and get to like, see Ethan receive that praise, to see, you know, in a way like Tom receive that praise. Like it's just a really beautiful moment that they put in there. And I think it's such a cool arc too, in terms of bringing it back to the first movie without just relying on a flashback, which there are plenty of flashbacks to that particular sequence. I wish we would have only seen it once, but anyway, I'm just going to leave that there. Um, so I know this is kind of a hot topic. I know that there's a lot of debate just about the concept of the entity as the villain or the antagonist. I really like the way that the movie explores the vast array of very human reactions to a situation like that unfolding. All feels very real and very relevant. In Dead Reckoning and this film, I never really saw Gabriel as the antagonist. He was more of a pawn for the entity. Basically, the entity was like, I have someone that I can use as a means to try and get to Ethan. I think the entity always knew that Ethan was the chosen one that it needed to get to, and really just used Gabriel to get there. I think it always foresaw that Gabriel was going to fail, and the mission it set out for him to accomplish was to use to his advantage that he was going to fail, but it was going to get him to Ethan, right? So, yeah, I think from that perspective, the character works quite well in both films. I still mourn what we could have and should have had when Nicholas Hoult was signed on to play Gabriel. I'm fascinated to know what that version of these films would have looked like, but nonetheless, it is what it is. We're just not going to get that. The Final Reckoning actually made me emotional in ways that a Mission Impossible movie hasn't before. As much as I love this series, I thought the movie had the perfect ending with Ethan walking away and disappearing into the crowd with all the power literally in his hands. The team trusts him more than anything. They don't trust anyone with having that much power, and he doesn't trust himself with having that much power, but they hand it over to him and trust that he's going to do what needs to be done to get it handled and make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. I just think that, it's obviously clear that he had the complete trust of his team, and having them all get to share that moment to acknowledge that their mission actually succeeded and that they survived, and it gave them a chance to kind of say their little goodbyes. I immediately started crying. There was just water pouring down my face, like probably the last 15 minutes in the movie, and I was not ready for that. And then Benji walks on screen and I started crying again. There was a lot of crying happening the last like 15 minutes or so. I don't know if we're going to get another Ethan Hunt Mission Impossible movie. And if we don't, I think this was a really appropriate send off for the character. I just think that even though I had issues with the film. I don't think it was a perfect movie. It's definitely not my favorite Mission Impossible movie by any means. I think that the fact that it was able to make me really feel something by the end, truly, that I was not expecting to feel. I think that's what movies are all about. I think that that just kind of proves that it was able to do something, that I wasn't expecting it to. And as a fan of who loves the series, who doesn't dislike a single one of the movies, that's amazing to me, and it felt like a gift. Couple other things I wanna mention just before we kind of wrap this up. I think that it's, 1, super important to me specifically that long hair Ethan Hunt came back to us. That is such a good look for him, just incredible. We got but look, this I know this is a controversial take, and I said this on Twitter a while ago, and it got some responses. But Mission Impossible 2 era is like the peak Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise aesthetic. So, the fact that we got to come back to him having some long, kinda shaggy hair was perfect, no notes. I do wanna shout out Pom Klementieff specifically. I think she is so fantastic in this movie. It's clear she put so much work into doing the stunts, and really, really being so physically present in the role. And if the Mission Impossible movies were to continue, I really hope that she is a huge part of them because I really feel like she would be so, so good. I really hope we get to see her do some more action movies even outside of this because she's just so, so great. I love the character arc kind of ending that we got for Benji here. He's been one of my favorite characters since he was introduced into the series. And I think we've got to watch him grow so much since he was introduced, and getting to see him get comfortable with being in the field and tagging along and really, outside of Luther, really being Ethan's kind of right hand man. They really were the trio, and he really grew into um, knowing Ethan and understanding how he could be of the most help as a part of the team, and really getting the confidence to step in and express himself and um, know his worth to the team. And I think getting to see Ethan here really tell him, you know how to lead this team. I have things I got to go do, and you're going to lead this group now. Like, you know what to do. That was just such a cool moment to see that, and to really see him get to take charge, especially towards the end when he's with Grace and with Paris, and they're, trying to disarm the bomb and all that. It was really, that moment really, I think, is what started the waterworks for me, when everything kind of cuts to black and you see the little 5D whatever drive in Grace's hand, and the entity has been trapped in there and it's glowing and it's the only light source. And then, she turns and you slowly see that everyone survived it. That wrecked me. That completely wrecked me. It was the perfect way to film that sequence and to have it revealed that the characters made it out of it. It was just brilliant. And I mean, again, it's really hard to articulate just how incredible these movies are in terms of what they've done for the stunt community and the action community, I think. Now I don't think, many other stars are gonna be pushing the boundaries the way that Tom Cruise chooses to, but I do think that it's just such a gift to be able to clearly see stunts that have taken years and years of planning, logistics and choreography and safety, and getting to see a team really pull off something like that, something like the plane sequence and something like the submarine sequence, and getting to watch, the behind the scenes and that stuff, and getting to hear the crew and Tom and McQuarrie talk about all the work that went into pulling those things off. I just think even the issues that I have with this movie, even though there were things that I wish that it would have done differently or would have done better, it's really hard not to sit here and just be so impressed with the stunt work, with the visuals, with some of the emotional beats that they were really able to hit on, and just really, appreciate the cast and the group dynamic. And I don't know, it's just something that, even though it's gonna be ranked pretty low, I think, on my list of Mission Impossible ranking, it's a movie that's gonna stick with me because those big moments that it does deliver on and does achieve what it sets out to are just are just spectacular. Um, and I think that it takes some big swings and it doesn't necessarily connect on all of them. It doesn't necessarily stick the landing on everything that it tries to do. But I'm glad that it's trying. I'm glad that it's trying to be this big, ambitious, kind of messy, kind of crazy um, ending potentially to this series that we've all been swept up in since the late 90s, which is super crazy to think about. But I'm really just grateful that we got this series. The Mission Impossible series will always be something pretty close to my heart, something that I'll always be happy to sit down and rewatch. And I always end up kind of having different favorites depending on the day, which is something that's really cool as well. Cause I just think there are so many different things that each different installment has to offer. But I'd love to hear what you guys thought of the movie. Please leave some comments and let me know. I appreciate you all for tuning in to this spoiler review. If you want to find me on social media and you're watching this on YouTube, all the links will be down in the description. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.